My name is Nadine, and I am 28 years old. On my engagement day, my parents did not show up to celebrate with me. Instead, they sent a strange anonymous package directly to my front porch. I stepped forward and reached out to tear off the thick layers of packing tape covering the top. Suddenly, my boyfriend yelled a piercing command that made me jump back in pure shock. "Don't open it," he shouted. I stared at him in total confusion and asked, "Why?" He did not answer right away. He carefully lifted the heavy cardboard box off the ground with both hands. I watched his expression change as he felt an unnatural shifting weight moving around inside. He slowly placed the package down on the glass table with a completely pale face. He grabbed my arm to pull me back and whispered, "Look closely." I held my breath and leaned down to inspect the edges of the box. My blood ran completely cold. I spotted a series of tiny pinholes meticulously punctured into the sides of the cardboard. Then I heard it. The noise was faint but impossible to ignore. A dry scratching sound of claws scraping against the inner walls echoed from the dark space inside. Someone had intentionally trapped a live, moving creature in there and shipped it directly to my house on the most important day of my life. Before we uncover the terrifying secret hidden inside this box in the next 15 minutes, please take a second to hit the subscribe button to support my channel and hear the full story. For the past 15 years, I always deluded myself into thinking that shouldering the majority of the financial burdens was the absolute only way to keep this family from completely falling apart. I constantly had to allocate a massive portion of my monthly income to pay various living expenses, mortgage installments, and accumulating utility bills for my father, Andrew, and my mother, Joyce. Because I was continuously covering their endless financial shortfalls and working exhausting overtime shifts just to keep their heads above water, I found myself left with almost absolutely zero emergency savings for my own personal future. My entire adult life revolved entirely around making sure their household ran smoothly, while I completely neglected my own financial stability and well-being. A few years ago, I naively opened a supplementary authorized user credit card and handed it over for my parents to use strictly in case of actual medical or household emergencies. However, they were incredibly calculating and deliberate about their spending habits with that specific account. They always made sure to quietly cover the required minimum payment exactly on time every single month directly from their own checking account. Because they managed the minimum requirements so perfectly, the banking system never triggered any automated fraud alerts or financial abuse warnings to my personal phone. I trusted them completely and rarely bothered to log into the online portal to scrutinize the detailed monthly billing statements. Because of my blind trust and complete lack of oversight, that supplementary card naturally evolved into an unlimited funding tool for my sister Autumn. She never hesitated for a single second to swipe my credit line to purchase expensive designer handbags or to fund luxury weekend resort vacations with her friends. She freely lived a lavish lifestyle that she could never genuinely afford on her own, entirely subsidized by my relentless hard work and my parents' quiet complicity. She treated my hard-earned credit limit like her own personal bank account without showing even a fraction of gratitude. Whenever I casually noticed a strangely high balance and dared to question these completely unreasonable expenses, Mom immediately deployed her carefully practiced emotional manipulation tactics. She would instantly start crying uncontrollably and loudly remind me of all the immense sacrifices they supposedly made to raise me during my difficult childhood. She expertly weaponized my guilt to force me into total submission, ensuring I would just quietly pay off the towering balances without any further complaints or deep investigations. She consistently made me feel like an utterly ungrateful daughter for simply asking where my money was actually going. My fiancé Warren was the very first person to completely shatter this fake facade of a loving and supportive family dynamic. He refused to let me remain blind to the harsh reality of the situation and continuously pulled up the actual digital banking statements on our shared laptop. He sat me down at the kitchen table and explicitly laid the hard numbers out right in front of me to prove that I was being systematically drained. He showed me the undeniable mathematical proof that my family was actively destroying my financial independence step by step. Thanks entirely to Warren's grounded perspective and his unwavering support, I finally started to heavily restrict their unnecessary luxury expenses so we could actively save money to organize our upcoming wedding ceremony. I firmly established new financial boundaries by significantly reducing the available credit limits on their supplementary cards and demanding total transparency for every single purchase they made. I explicitly demanded that they start taking basic accountability for their own lives moving forward. I had absolutely no idea that simply establishing these reasonable financial limits would act as the direct catalyst for their incredibly toxic and vindictive retaliation against me. Exactly 3 weeks before the engagement day, a series of aggressive knocks completely shattered the quiet atmosphere in our living room late at night. My parents appeared at the front door completely unannounced, with deeply dissatisfied expressions etched across their faces. They barged inside without waiting for an invitation, and entirely ignored the fact that my best friend Brenda and I were deeply focused on sorting through hundreds of wedding guest invitations. They did not even bother to ask how the event preparations were going before actively initiating their actual selfish agenda. Mom immediately let out a heavy sigh while dramatically taking a seat on the living room sofa to begin her carefully rehearsed manipulative performance. She skillfully shifted the conversation to complain about how Autumn had hastily placed a massive, non-refundable deposit on a luxury dream car without securing any proper loan approval. Mom looked directly into my eyes and casually stated that the dealership was threatening to cancel the entire order if the remaining balance was not transferred immediately. Without showing any signs of hesitation or remorse about ruining my special moment, she leaned forward to deliver her ultimate financial demand. Autumn has already placed a deposit on the car. Our family just needs you to help cover the rest of the balance. She genuinely expected me to completely drain my dedicated wedding savings account just to accommodate another one of my sister's incredibly extravagant financial mistakes. I instantly saw right through this familiar coercive tactic because I had endured similar emotional extortion countless times over the past decade. Instead of quietly giving in to keep the peace like I always did during my younger years, I firmly shook my head and delivered an absolute refusal. I declared with absolute certainty that I would not withdraw a single cent from my personal savings account to fund that luxurious lifestyle anymore. I made it incredibly clear that my financial obligations toward their irresponsible spending habits were permanently terminated effective immediately. The sudden realization that their primary funding source was finally fighting back sent a massive shockwave of visible anger directly through the room. Dad became furiously enraged by my unexpected defiance and violently swept his arm across the center coffee table. He knocked a heavy wooden magazine tray directly onto the hardwood floor with a deafening crash that echoed throughout the entire house. He loudly reprimanded me for being a thoroughly ungrateful person who only cared about securing my own personal happiness while entirely ignoring my struggling relatives. He aggressively accused me of abandoning the very people who had sacrificed everything to raise me during my most difficult developmental years. His booming voice was obviously designed to intimidate me into immediate submission, but I stood my ground while refusing to show any signs of weakness. Before the situation could escalate any further into outright physical intimidation, Brenda bravely stepped forward to place herself directly between my parents and me. She sternly demanded that they immediately respect my newly established financial boundaries while completely stopping their toxic family pressure as a weapon for financial extortion. My parents were clearly caught off guard by the presence of an outside witness actively standing up against their manipulative behavior. Dad scoffed loudly while turning toward the hallway, but Mom remained perfectly still while staring at me with a chilling lack of emotion. She did not scream or lose her temper like a normal person, but simply offered a completely cold glare accompanied by a terrifyingly calm threat. "You will soon understand exactly how it feels to turn your back on your own family." They walked out into the dark night, then slammed the heavy front door shut without looking back even once. Exactly 15 minutes after we initially discovered the strange cardboard package resting on our front porch, an official animal control vehicle with flashing emergency lights parked abruptly on the edge of our lawn. A specialized officer wearing thick protective handling gear carefully approached the table before meticulously slicing open the multiple layers of heavy shipping tape. He used a pair of long mechanical tongs to skillfully capture a massive and highly aggressive exotic spider that immediately lunged toward the opening. The experienced professional quickly identified the terrifying specimen as a highly restricted species that was strictly prohibited from being transported through the Federal Postal Service under any circumstances. Even though the responding expert assured us that a bite from this specific creature would not necessarily serve as a lethal weapon, the sheer horror of the situation remained deeply paralyzing. The horrifying image of that gruesome biological specimen, maliciously locked inside a sealed dark container, was undeniably traumatic for anyone to witness. It was abundantly clear that this package was a brutally calculated psychological terror attack, specifically designed to completely destroy the peace and happiness of my engagement day celebration. The sender wanted to guarantee that my special milestone would be permanently associated with a profound sense of overwhelming fear and physical danger. The uniformed officer stepped aside to begin writing a detailed incident report, while thoroughly examining the completely fake return address printed on the fraudulent shipping label. Warren stood nearby with a deep frown forming on his face as he carefully processed the incredibly suspicious timing of this highly malicious delivery. He mentally connected the expensive nature of the illegal package with the recent family conflict regarding financial demands. He turned toward me with a remarkably serious expression before delivering a very urgent instruction. "I need you to open your phone and immediately check the transaction history of the supplementary card." My fingers were visibly shaking uncontrollably as I unlocked my mobile device and navigated directly to the main dashboard of my online banking application. I completely bypassed my primary checking account and scrolled deeply into the detailed digital statements connected to the shared credit line. I became absolutely stunned and physically nauseous when my eyes landed on a massive pending online payment totaling exactly $12,000. The detailed transaction description explicitly indicated that the massive sum of funds was transferred directly to a highly questionable facility known for illegally trading exotic creatures. The specific 4-digit verification number displayed perfectly on the glowing screen irrevocably matched the supplementary plastic card currently resting inside my mother's leather wallet. The unalterable digital footprint provided undeniable proof that Mom and Dad had deliberately used my own hard-earned money to purchase this disgusting biological hazard. They meticulously executed this incredibly elaborate and expensive scheme simply to ruthlessly punish me for the firm financial refusal I confidently delivered exactly 3 weeks ago. They essentially forced me to unknowingly finance my own horrifying engagement present without showing a single ounce of basic human decency. A massive wave of pure betrayal completely overwhelmed my entire nervous system as I stared blankly at the irrefutable electronic evidence of their unforgivable crime. Oh my God, they actually used my supplementary credit card to purchase this absolutely disgusting thing. I finally realized with absolute clarity that any remaining illusion of our family bond was completely rotten to the absolute core. My parents were fully willing to commit a serious federal crime and actively endanger my personal safety just to satisfy their deeply twisted desire for personal vengeance. The crushing reality of their profound cruelty effectively destroyed the final lingering threads of my familial guilt. At exactly 7 o'clock that evening, I locked myself inside my home office with a level of terrifyingly calm clarity that I had never experienced during the past 15 years. There were absolutely no more useless tears of sorrow or lingering feelings of weak submission remaining inside my completely exhausted system. Instead of throwing an emotional tantrum, I sat down at my desk to actively initiate the necessary legal and financial procedures required to permanently cut off the oxygen supply nourishing those parasites. The undeniable proof of their malicious federal crime finally gave me the ultimate strength to completely sever the toxic biological ties that had anchored me down for my entire adulthood. I grabbed my mobile phone and immediately dialed the 24-hour emergency hotline listed on the back of my primary banking card. Once the customer service representative verified my secure identity, I firmly reported the severe financial abuse committed by my authorized users without experiencing a single ounce of hesitation. I need to urgently report severe supplementary card abuse, and I want to freeze my entire credit profile immediately. The agent listened carefully to my serious tone and swiftly proceeded to permanently lock the supplementary credit card currently residing inside Mom's purse. That specific piece of plastic was instantly rendered completely useless for any future unauthorized transactions or luxury shopping sprees. Furthermore, I explicitly instructed the banking institution to place a high-level fraud alert across all my connected financial accounts to monitor any suspicious activities. I also demanded a comprehensive credit freeze across all 3 major reporting bureaus to completely block any potential attempts to open new accounts using my stolen personal identity. Because my parents previously had full access to my social security number, implementing these extreme security measures was absolutely critical to protecting my long-term financial future from their desperate retaliation. They would no longer possess the capability to secretly ruin my pristine credit score just because they suddenly lost their primary source of free income. After concluding the lengthy phone call, I opened my personal laptop to directly access my online banking dashboard and systematically dismantle their remaining financial lifelines. My hands felt completely steady as I navigated through the digital menus to ruthlessly cancel every single automated payment directive associated with their comfortable lifestyle. I permanently deleted the monthly electronic transfers designated for their expensive apartment rent, their premium cellular phone plans, and the comprehensive insurance coverage for their vehicles. With just a few decisive clicks of my computer mouse, I effectively demolished the comfortable financial safety net that they had shamelessly exploited for over a decade. Warren stood quietly leaning against the wooden doorframe of the office, patiently observing my systematic dismantling of the toxic financial bonds without offering any unnecessary interruptions. He respectfully maintained his physical distance and completely honored my independent decision to personally handle the total destruction of my familial financial obligations. He thoroughly understood that I needed to execute this massive financial purge entirely on my own to properly reclaim my stolen independence and rebuild my personal boundaries. Once the final confirmation screen loaded successfully, I closed the laptop forcefully and looked up to meet his supportive gaze with a newfound sense of profound liberation. Everything is completely finished from now on. They will have to financially pay the ultimate price for their own lifestyle. The entire financial purification process was executed swiftly and absolutely thoroughly, leaving no hidden loopholes or active accounts for them to secretly manipulate later. This decisive series of actions officially closed the dark era where I felt forced to constantly purchase a fake sense of familial peace using my own hard-earned wealth. I finally reclaimed my total autonomy and prepared myself to face the inevitable explosive fallout that would definitely occur tomorrow morning when their credit cards inevitably declined. At exactly 8 o'clock the following morning, the smartphone resting on the granite kitchen counter began vibrating uncontrollably, with dozens of consecutive missed calls from familiar numbers. I finally accepted the incoming connection and placed the device on speakerphone just as Mom began screaming angrily through the external audio speaker. She loudly complained about experiencing a highly embarrassing situation because the supplementary credit card was repeatedly triggering error messages while she was trying to complete a transaction at the retail checkout counter. The intense irritation in her vocal delivery clearly indicated that she was far more concerned about her temporary public humiliation than the actual status of our personal relationship. She forcefully attempted to utilize her traditional commanding tone to pressure me into immediately contacting the primary banking institution to quickly resolve the unexpected payment decline. She completely ignored the horrifying engagement package incident from yesterday and acted as if everything between us was perfectly normal, despite the severe trauma she intentionally inflicted upon me. She genuinely believed she could just order me around to fix her financial inconveniences without facing any severe consequences for her previous illegal actions. I cannot understand what is wrong with your credit card because the machine keeps declining my purchase, so you must call the bank to unlock it immediately. Her arrogant demand echoed throughout the quiet kitchen while Warren stood nearby shaking his head at her sheer audacity to demand financial assistance. Instead of offering a lengthy explanation regarding the deactivated accounts or the frozen credit profile, I maintained a perfectly steady posture and lowered my vocal tone to a chilling whisper. I refused to beat around the bush or engage in another exhausting screaming match with a highly manipulative individual. I decided to deliver a short and incredibly sharp statement designed to completely shatter her arrogant delusion of absolute control over my daily life. The local police already opened that specific package yesterday, and they know exactly what dangerous creature was hidden inside of it. That singular declaration was perfectly calculated to serve as the ultimate reality check for her malicious behavior. The other end of the telephone connection instantly fell into a heavy and suffocating silence that lasted for several agonizing seconds. The only sound transmitting through the digital receiver was the rapid and panicked breathing of an older woman experiencing extreme psychological distress. Her sudden inability to formulate a coherent response clearly revealed the overwhelming panic of a guilty suspect realizing their massive criminal mistake had been fully exposed. The terrifying realization that federal law enforcement was officially involved had successfully stripped away her fake confidence and replaced it with genuine dread regarding her potential prison sentence. After recovering from the initial psychological shock, she frantically attempted to completely change her defensive strategy by aggressively altering the fundamental narrative of the situation. She began stammering uncontrollably over the speakerphone while desperately trying to classify the dangerous exotic animal delivery as a harmless little misunderstanding meant to be a funny engagement joke. She tried to downplay the extreme severity of the federal offense by claiming that I was dramatically overreacting to a simple family prank. Her pathetic attempts to minimize the psychological trauma only further cemented my absolute disgust toward her deeply toxic personality. I did not even bother wasting my time listening to the rest of her pathetic excuses or fabricated justifications for endangering my personal safety. Without uttering another single word of warning, I decisively pressed the red disconnect button on the touchscreen and permanently blocked her cellular number from my contact list. I peacefully walked away from the kitchen counter to join Warren in the living room, while leaving her to drown entirely inside the overwhelming fear of her impending legal consequences. At exactly 12 o'clock in the afternoon, the piercing sound of burning rubber screeched loudly as a familiar utility vehicle violently swerved onto the gravel driveway located directly in front of our house. Dad, Mom, and Autumn quickly stepped out of the heavy vehicle wearing deeply tense expressions while marching aggressively toward the front steps of the property. They loudly claimed they simply wanted to have a reasonable family discussion to officially clear the air regarding the incredibly tense, ongoing situation between us. However, their highly aggressive physical posturing clearly revealed their true intention of utilizing numerical superiority to forcibly intimidate me into withdrawing the active criminal report immediately. I immediately walked out onto the wooden porch to confidently confront the hostile group before they could forcefully enter my private residence without any legal permission. The attempted family negotiation rapidly deteriorated into absolute chaos before anyone could even exchange basic civilian greetings or establish a civil tone for the conversation. Dad instantly lost his volatile temper and began shouting aggressively about how I desperately needed to learn proper manners and demonstrate basic traditional respect for my older relatives. "What the hell do you think you are doing by reporting your own flesh and blood to the police?" I refused to engage in a pointless screaming match with a completely irrational man who actively endangered my personal safety just to satisfy his severely wounded ego. Instead of wasting my limited breath arguing over basic morality, I forcefully threw the printed banking statements and the official police report documents directly onto the green grass. I wanted them to clearly understand that their actions had crossed a permanent legal boundary that could never be erased by fake apologies or manipulative emotional tears. The scattered legal paperwork provided undeniable physical proof that their malicious involvement with the illegal exotic animal delivery was permanently recorded within the federal justice system. The overwhelming arrogance previously displayed by my parents instantly shattered into a million pieces when they saw the federal case numbers printed clearly on the official documents. Their aggressively furious faces turned completely pale as the terrifying reality of severe legal consequences finally bypassed their incredibly stubborn psychological defenses. Autumn began violently trembling and frantically backed away from the undeniable evidence, while loudly blaming her parents for dragging her into their incredibly stupid criminal conspiracy. She screamed hysterically about how their reckless desire for revenge was going to completely ruin her comfortable life and send them all directly to a federal prison facility. Warren did not feel the need to violently roar or aggressively threaten the trespassing group with any form of physical violence to establish his powerful protective presence. He simply stepped forward to stand firmly beside me while holding his cellular device perfectly steady to capture the entire chaotic confrontation on high-definition digital video. He maintained a remarkably calm demeanor while staring directly at the panicked intruders and delivering a highly effective verbal warning to stop their aggressive advancement immediately. "I am recording everything right now, and the local emergency dispatch operator is already on the line." The horrifying realization that their familiar manipulative tactics were entirely useless finally penetrated their deeply stubborn minds without leaving any room for further deceptive arguments. The three of them frantically scrambled over each other to retreat toward the parked vehicle while desperately trying to shield their faces from the active recording camera. They rapidly reversed the heavy vehicle out of the gravel driveway and sped away down the residential street in a state of absolute and complete public humiliation. Their desperate escape proved that cowards will always run away when they are forced to confront the actual legal consequences of their own toxic behavior. The toxic presence that had constantly threatened my entire adult life finally vanished from my personal property without requiring any further physical confrontation or emotional exhaustion. On the very first Monday morning following the disastrous confrontation, Warren and I arrived at the professional office of my lawyer, Laura, to establish the ultimate legal defense barrier. Laura expertly assisted me in officially filing a comprehensive restraining order to ensure that those toxic individuals could never physically approach my residence or my upcoming wedding venue. Furthermore, she thoroughly initiated complex estate protection procedures to permanently separate my personal financial portfolio from any potential familial claims or future legal disputes. This incredibly crucial legal separation guaranteed that my newly established family with Warren would remain completely insulated from their endless cycle of catastrophic financial decisions. Meanwhile, the terrifying exotic animal package incident was immediately transferred to the federal postal inspectors and the local animal control authorities for a comprehensive criminal investigation. The federal agents treated the intentional postal delivery of a dangerous biological hazard as a highly severe offense, requiring immediate punitive action against the perpetrators. The devastating real-world consequences of their malicious actions materialized incredibly fast because they completely lost their primary source of limitless financial support. Without my monthly financial contributions to maintain her luxurious lifestyle, Autumn quickly had her expensive vehicle aggressively repossessed by the frustrated dealership. Mom and Dad were suddenly forced to humiliatingly borrow money from distant acquaintances just to pay their massive legal fines and narrowly avoid total bankruptcy. The profound social embarrassment of their public financial collapse forced them to quietly relocate to a much smaller apartment in a completely different neighborhood. Through deliberate action, I systematically deleted every single remaining method of communication and completely focused my energy on building a beautiful new household alongside Warren. I permanently left behind the incredibly toxic people who deliberately destroyed their own unearned privilege of being considered my actual family members. The crushing weight of their constant emotional extortion finally lifted off my shoulders and allowed me to experience genuine peace for the first time. Our beautiful engagement ceremony eventually proceeded perfectly, without their toxic presence marking the wonderful beginning of a truly healthy and completely independent chapter. On behalf of the production channel, we firmly state that this story serves as an educational narrative designed to convey powerful messages about establishing personal boundaries. We strongly emphasize the importance of resolving severe family crises through pure rationality and relying upon appropriate legal frameworks. Evaluating the dramatic situation completely objectively, the female protagonist demonstrated remarkable psychological strength by decisively protecting her future and permanently cutting off all toxic emotional ties. The malicious antagonists rightfully suffered the inevitable devastating financial and legal consequences that resulted directly from their own incredibly greedy and completely irrational decisions. Looking back at this entire family nightmare, we can extract three deeply profound and undeniably harsh truths about human nature. Sharing the exact same bloodline does not automatically grant anyone the inherent right to manipulate your emotions or drain your hard-earned wealth. Financial exploitation that is carefully disguised under the sacred name of family remains an absolutely unforgivable crime. Continuously surrendering to completely unreasonable demands will never actually purchase lasting peace because it only actively stimulates the bottomless greed of manipulative individuals. Establishing unbreakable boundaries and permanently walking away from toxic relatives to protect your own safety is never a shameful act of selfishness. It is actually the ultimate personal responsibility of a mature adult seeking a peaceful and healthy existence. Thank you for dedicating your valuable time to listen to the final moments of this incredibly turbulent story. We truly appreciate your deep understanding and your continuous support for our creative storytelling channel. If you were manipulated by your own relatives, how exactly would you handle the crisis? Please leave a comment below sharing your thoughts, and remember to subscribe to our channel.